Hello and welcome to Hotelephant in Boulder, Colorado. It's the silly name of my house. It's actually not a hotel. And I'm honored to be here today with Scott Franklin, the founder, right, of Lumos and Lighthouse Solar, which actually solarized Hotelephant many years ago. I think 8 years ago, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah. So Scott has lost his voice a little bit, so this is going to be a very intimate conversation. So thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So solar, obviously, I was saying to Rachel, who's videoing before, is kind of like a concept car, I feel like, to a lot of America. People are like excited, but they're kind of waiting for it to be available and practical everywhere. So when is solar going to be, you know, on every rooftop in the U.S.?
It's a great question. You know, I think I think the way you put it's really good too, that it's a concept car, because it's sort of artificially unobtainable. The reality is it works today and it works perfectly. And the only reason it's not on every rooftop and every school and every building is not for technical reasons, but purely political and financial reasons.
So if we had, like, God were the president and she, said, let there be light, solar could be really power all of America, even the cloudy parts. Like, there's no hold up technically.
Absolutely no hold up technically. You know, great. It's kind of statistic that's interesting is Germany is the world's largest solar market.
Right.
Germany has the same amount of sunshine as Anchorage, Alaska.
Which is not much.
Not so much. It's
right.
a pretty cloudy place most of the
right.
time. So the point being, you know, solar works even in cloudy environments. And
so how does that work? Because solar is sunshine, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be bright sunshine like Colorado. It can be, you know, diffuse light.
Right.
It needs light.
Which is actually like half of my solar thing in the back
shaded.
is getting it from beneath.
From beneath, exactly, yeah. The real issue, though, is back to the finances and the politics. You know, the way the utility structure and the grid is set up in the United States and most of the Western world is distributed generation. Centralized generation of energy, and then, you know, power lines being sharing that energy and transferring it far distances.
So our grid is like 100 years old or something, basically,
yes.
More or less.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Well, it's probably different parts of the grid are older than others, but the concept and structure are basically, I think, simply put, they're outdated. It's time to update how we think about the grid and how we think about generation.
So let's say you were president or whatever, the person in charge. Would you say, okay, first we have to, like Eisenhower did with the interstate system, first we have to modernize the grid everywhere? Like, what would be the steps to go solar?
You know, it's a complicated question. I think there's not one clear path, but I think the overarching concept would be to allow open access to the grid. You know, try and create a level playing field for distributed generation. So solar is considered a distributed asset or distributed generation capacity, meaning it's distributed at the point of production is where it's being used, versus
I see.
A centralized production plant like a big coal-fired plant or nuclear plant. Those are centralized.
So solar is distributed at
everywhere.
All the houses and offices and rental properties.
Exactly, and they're also being generated right where it's being used. So it's on your rooftop, you power your house.
It's local power.
It's as local as it gets.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons why that's beneficial to the grid and also to society. It's way more secure. There's not a single point of failure. You know, years ago we had the giant outage in the East Coast, and then recently in Washington.
I was there,
yeah. And those kind of grid outages are caused due to centralized, you know, production.
So even from a defense point of view, from a conservative like GOP point of view, if the terrorists attacked and everyone was solar, we'd be
a lot more stable,
a lot more secure.
Yeah.
And
as we've seen, you know, the power goes out, people go crazy. You know, the whole world shuts down because we operate on electricity.
Right. How am I going to tweet?
Exactly.
You know?
You can't tweet. You can't play the Xbox.
Yeah.
You know, there's no Netflix.
Right.
Everything
stops. Have to have candles and a nice dinner.
Exactly.
That would be horrible.
Yeah.
One of the many arguments I hear against changing the status quo, against going solar, going wind, is, you know, you give up all these jobs, right? These precious coal jobs and these precious natural gas jobs. But actually, you'd be creating tons of domestic jobs, right?
I think the question is what kind of jobs and are they long-term jobs? This idea of natural gas being the bridge fuel, I really think of it as a bridge to nowhere, right? Because it's natural gas is non-renewable. As much as we are fracking today and we think there's this incredible boom, every oil man knows where the boom, there's a bust, right? It just doesn't go on forever. And what's frustrating to me is that we're not making the investments today in a sustainable future and jobs that will have longevity.
Also, the way to get natural gas these days is to destroy the earth and frack and pollute the water and la. It's not good for anyone, even the people working on it. And the way to do solar is the sun comes down and either hits a flower or your solar panel, and everyone's happy. And
exactly. And I think the question we need to be asking ourselves is, what kind of investment, what kind of future are we trying to build? Do we want to have a scorched earth with wellheads and ruining water supplies,
right,
and
Mordor, basically.
Mordor,
yeah,
or a bright sunny future,
that and it's not even a future though. I mean, I did present. This 8 years ago, right, and I was just talking with someone at a cafe downtown about coming to talk with you, and she was saying, "Oh, how much does it offset and stuff?" And I was saying, I mean, even with my little panel back here, great spot.
Yeah,
I get money back a couple months a year because I don't use that much.
Right.
And then, the rest of the time it's pretty low. I mean, it feels really good,
Yeah, and that's, it works.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is the kids can hang out underneath that power plant.
Right.
You've got a power plant,
right,
and it's also a picnic table.
Yeah.
And
it's got sky chairs and a hammock.
Yeah, it's cool. And whereas, you're not going to bring the kids out to a natural gas fracking well. So
no hammocks.
No hammocks, no nothing.
Yeah.
No living beings, basically. And I think that's the question, again, what do we want for Colorado? What do we want for the rest of the U.S.? And are we going to export that technology to the rest of the world? Is that really our legacy? And I think the other big question is, why? Really, why? Why do this? Because there's no future to it. And we can it's not like it's the only way to make electricity. We have a great way to make electricity right now. And
so then why do the powers that be not say, number one, it's obviously seems to be the right thing to do, but number two, it actually can make money and be profitable and be a good business and create jobs. So why is the status quo so afraid of this?
I think that has a lot to do with momentum, and I think there's already an entrenched business model. They know how to make money selling gas. Right. They know how to make money drilling wells. They know how to make money selling infrastructure and financing infrastructure. Solar represents a totally different paradigm, and it's just not their business.
But they could make money off of it.
Absolutely. I mean, solar companies are making money, right?
Yeah, Xcel's that you were saying is taken over is now the biggest.
Yeah, well, now Xcel will be the largest solar installer in Colorado this year. They're going to do the largest system, dwarfing all other companies in the state by a factor of 5 or 6 as far as solar capacity installed.
Right.
And so obviously they think it's good business, and they know it's good business.
Right. Yeah, so you made a lot of news when you're one of the more prominent, larger solar companies in Colorado, which was a very proud kind of solar leader.
Yeah.
Or was. And there were all these rebates and these laws that we fought for. What am I saying? Ballot measures.
Yeah, Amendment 37. Yeah. So that was Amendment 37 created the solar industry as we know it today in Colorado.
Right. And what did it do?
Yeah, well, what it did was it set a renewable portfolio standard. So the voters of Colorado said we want a certain amount of electricity to be generated by renewables, and then the rulemaking that came out of that was specifically called out certain amounts to be generated by customer-sited solar systems. Mm-hmm. So that created what we know as homeowners, businesses, etc. Customer-sited. So truly distributed generation, and that really kicked off the industry, and that was the intention.
Yeah, it was a big boom, right?
It was huge.
Obama's walking around the Capitol with your colleagues at Namaste.
Exactly, and it was a very proud moment, and it was the first voter-driven ballot measure to create a renewable portfolio standard. The real fundamental mistake I think that was made, though, on that eve was handing the keys to the kingdom to Xcel. Xcel Energy was given the the job of administering the rebate program. And to be clear, this is where their genius comes in as a big marketing company, publicly traded utility, is up until the night that the amendment passed, they fought Amendment 37 with millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Absolutely against it. The second it passed, they came out the next day and Solar Awards brought to you by Xcel Energy.
Right.
And they positioned themselves as, we're bringing you solar energy.
They play both sides of the field.
Of course, and they're a great company, and I think they do a really good job for their shareholders, which is what they're supposed to do. Not actually for the citizens of Colorado.
Right.
The other thing that I think that they've done a great job of is really obfuscating the truth of how the incentives are generated. There's a common misconception in Colorado that Xcel creates this incentive out of their largesse.
Yeah.
That they decide, out of the goodness of their heart, to give money back to their ratepayers in the form of incentive. Nothing can be further from the truth.
It's our own money.
It's our money.
Yeah.
They collect a tax, a surcharge on every utility customer's bill into a pool, and that pool is then redistributed.
Right.
That's the program. They have no cost.
They're sort of like the mafia, Don, and he'll give you gifts and stuff on high holidays.
Exactly.
But basically he'll kill you if you
go the wrong way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
So
you have to pay his people like weekly envelopes of cash.
as long as you keep paying, everybody's okay.
Right.
Nobody gets hurt.
Right. But so I actually would argue, as I think you would, that it would be in Xcel's interest and their shareholders' interest to think long term. We've all seen huge companies again and again over the ages, like the railroads. The famous quote about them is they made the mistake of thinking they were railroad companies instead of transportation companies, and they didn't evolve. I was a print magazine, and I evolved into being a website, and that was kind of painful transition, but I knew it had to be done. And Xcel could evolve into making money off of wind and solar. They would get tons of great PR, and everyone would win.
The question is, have they made that realization themselves? Have they realized that they're in the energy business, or do they still think they're in the power plant business? And they're two different things. Because if you're in the energy business, then you adapt to the new models that are emerging. Leasing solar panels, owning different kinds of infrastructure, distributed generation assets. And it's a very different model. They're not used to that. They're used to floating bonds for large capital infrastructure and having the ratepayers pay for it. And they need to shift that thinking.
But the voters have proven again and again that this is what we want. We want municipalization, or we want control over our own energy, or we don't like fracking in our town, or whatever.
Yeah.
And Xcel and the governor, who's a environmentalist and liberal generally, have proven again and again that they don't really care about.
Well, that's
I'm saying he's an environmentalist. That's how we all thought of him up until the whole fracking thing, and now basically they're just saying we want control and money and what.
Well, what other conclusion can you draw from the actions that are coming out? I think calling Hickenlooper an environmentalist is.
Well, I think we all. I remember seeing him speak at the Sustainable Living Fair up in Fort Collins, and then this whole fracking thing happens, and suddenly we're like, it's a little bit like our feeling around Obama. Like we are all Obama supporters, and then you see it goes, especially with Hick, in my personal view, it goes way beyond just compromise to the point of like he's actually
complete capitulation
on their team.
Well, clearly on their team.
Yeah.
But it goes. You're going into much deeper, water here. I think as far as going to the root cause of why do we have these fundamental issues, and back to the question of why is there not solar in every building? Why is Colorado not powered 80% by solar energy? And why are we the largest, most active fracking state in the nation?
It's so sad because in preparing for this conversation, I asked normal U.S. citizens what they were curious about. And none of them were curious about the politics or Hickenlooper or Xcel or any of this. They all said, how come I can't get solar on my home or my rental property, or how do I do it? Or everyone's just ready to do it. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, we can't do it because of the status quo.
Why can't Longmont ban fracking? Why can't Lafayette ban fracking?
They actually did ban fracking and then got sued by the governor, right?
Exactly. So that's the same exact issue.
Yeah.
So who's in control here? Is it the people, or is it the It's the government and the big oil and gas companies that they're working for.
And typically, I'm a proud American. I love democracy. I don't love Citizens United. I don't love a lot of things. But typically, I would say, well, the people, it's our job to show what we want. But in this case, we again and again have shown what we wanted. And Excel comes up, we were saying, like a zombie, like out of the grave, like,
right.
Comes in.
They're not giving up.
Right. So we're now going to walk through and continue our conversation and get away from the traffic noise, which is powered by oil. God damn it. We're going to go to the solar side of the house. So welcome to Hotel Elephant. It's dark. So this is where we do most of the videos, in front of the mantle in the winter. This is the fierce guardian of the house. As you can see, he leaped up to attack the intruders. All the rugs and furniture is either Eco or Craigslist. Here's someone hasn't done their dishes. Here's destroyed archives from the flood a year ago. It's kind of sad. And then we're collecting branches from my very small treehouse. All right, and the tour completed if you've filmed vertically up with the solar panels that Scott Franklin's Lighthouse Solar installed, I think like 8 years ago.
8 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. And this whole structure you guys also built, I think. Yeah. It was at the library. Yeah. It was an exhibition thing.
Yeah.
Why did we put it here as opposed to the roof? It's kind of interesting.
Well, your roof was kind of broken up, by it's a real traditional Victorian house, and
yeah.
There's not a really good aspect.
And there were huge trees on either side.
Big trees, not a lot of roof area to mount solar, so we chose to build you a structure in the backyard.
And you had a term for this, right?
We call them solarscapes.
Solarscapes.
Yeah.
So the idea, which nobody ever thinks about, I find it's really interesting, is you can put your solar right where you get the most sun.
Right.
I got so much sun here, you couldn't even plant a garden or something easily. And then you can use it, like we were saying, inside.
Yeah.
You have your hammock, your sky chairs. We have barbecue, people hanging out in barbecues, picnics.
It's not toxic.
Yeah, unlike fracking. So this is actually my power plant.
This is your power plant.
And then it connects to this box back here, I guess.
Yep, and then back to your meter.
And then back to the meter, which we can look at.
Yeah.
If we don't change the system, solar will continue to be marginalized, right?
Well, it comes back to the fundamental question is who does the system work for? Does it work for the people? And do we make decisions based on what's best for the most people for the most, longest term? Mm-hmm. Or are we making decisions based on what's going to be the best for the power and the corporation's next quarterly earnings and the one after that?
Right.
And if that's the focus point,
yeah,
solar will be many, many, many years in coming, if at all. And
so what's your game plan? I mean, you don't have a ton of power as compared to Hickenlooper or someone like that, or Excel, but within the solar industry, you're as powerful as anyone.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think what we have, and I put myself in the we of the people side, is
I mean, what's your game plan? Like, what's your recommendation? How do we advance the ball?
It's a great question, and that's one that I kind of sort of think about a lot and struggle with. Is my fundamental belief is that by doing good business, by creating real value that creates long-term satisfaction for customers, that's the foundation. And if we do that, then we can build from there. And
people see that it works. It just starts changing things.
It starts to snowball.
Yeah.
And they go, I'm just going to do that. And what we need to do as people is just choose to not buy into the status quo offer and migrate away. And I think we're just one sort of gear in that whole machine, but that's how it happens.
I feel like that's what Elon Musk has done with Tesla. Is he said, well, we can wait a generation, or we could just kind of build something and try and make it work really well.
Yeah.
And then people will be like, oh, electric, actually, you can go from 0 to 60 even faster, and it's way lighter, and it's cool, and there's all these, it's kind of like just lead by example and kind of give up on government. I mean, he got a lot of loans from government and stuff, but...
I mean, that's sort of obviously, we're nothing like a Tesla or Elon Musk by any means, but by leading by example, by doing what we believe in, and that's how we think it's going to work.
Our title for the video is Scott Franklin, I am the Elon Musk of solar. But he's actually into solar as well, which is funny that I mentioned him. What do you, I mean, so that is a question I get from all my friends, is like, how, if so many people are into rentals now, not homeowning, because, you know, obviously homeowning is pricier and pricier. So what can renters do? That's something Elon's trying to address, I think, partially, right? Getting panels on all these homes.
I don't
like,
think
what can renters
Elon
do?
Musk and Solar City is the company he's involved with.
Yeah.
They're not directly involved in that kind of rental market so much, but the idea of solar gardens or shared access to solar, that's starting to happen. And I think, again, that's tied to what the utilities will allow to happen.
Right.
And I think what you're going to see from Excel very quickly is they're going to make offers to Excel customers saying, you can sign up for solar power. And
Just like wind.
Just like wind.
Yeah.
And so, you know, on the big scale, what they're doing is they're going to become, like I said, they're going to be the largest solar installer in Colorado. They're going to have the most solar to sell. And what they're going to do is use their regulated monopoly position to turn back to their customer and say, don't hire Namaste or Lighthouse Solar. Just buy from us.
Don't hire the independent companies.
And have it put on your rooftop. Just buy from me on my centralized system in Pueblo. And you just check a box and it'll come to you. You'll be buying solar.
Right.
So.
And is that not a good option? I mean, obviously supporting independent local
I think
people is creating local jobs.
I think in the big picture, it is good just because it's more solar on the grid. I think the tactics used to get there are not really that positive, and will not have a good effect on that Colorado solar market, and doesn't really help move distributed generation forward.
So do you get, I mean, I feel like you're in a pretty rough business.
It's a brutal business.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in a rough business a lot of the time. But, you know, do you get like depressed or angry a lot? I mean, it feels like you're in a...
I don't know about depressed or angry.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well,
just on a personal level.
That's a good question.
Like climbing or?
Yeah, I do. I have things that I do. I do a lot of yoga. I climb a lot. I ski. I'm super active, so I keep myself, you know, look at the bright side. And we do solar, so, you know, that's super gratifying, right? When we sell solar, that's always good.
Right.
And people install it. And
I like that you said, look at the bright side. That's
what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be your slogan too. Yeah. And how long, like, would something like this, I mean, I haven't done any maintenance or anything. How long?
Yeah.
What do people have to do? Like, if they install solar?
Nothing. Yeah, it's virtually maintenance free. You know, that's the beauty. There's no moving parts, so there's no valves. There's nothing to really go wrong.
So pretty much no maintenance, and then
Keep
do you
it
have
clean.
to replace them at some point?
Well, the warranty on the modules themselves is 25 years.
Wow.
So
It's pretty good.
it's pretty good.
A refrigerator warranty is probably like 3 years or something.
Something like that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think we've covered the basics. It sounds like to me like the sort of inspiring takeaway is, you know, the morass and the molasses of like the unmoving status quo kind of fight over money and greed and lack of imagination and all this stuff with the political and the utilities world is kind of solved, as you said, by simply, if you can put a solar panel up on your house and just lead by example and just kind of, if we wait for permission from the government, we'll be, or from the utilities, from the corporations, we'll be waiting forever, right?
Pretty much.
So we just got to kind of do it.
You just got to do it.
So this is about more than, you know, my utility bill. This is about, it's analogous to a civil rights movement for our right to decide our own energy and climate change, our own future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what kind of future are we going to leave for the children and their children beyond them?
Which is something Republicans, Democrats, everyone cares about equally. We all care about our grandchildren.
Yeah, but we have to take action,
Yeah.
you know, and we have to make decisions that are consistent with that. And that's the biggest problem is that, you know, decisions are making about what to allow and not to allow as far as land use and water rights have very, very long implications. And we're not taking that seriously.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
the damage that fracking wells does are permanent. They're not just
right.
No big deal. We just pack it up and move away.
Yeah.
We're left with that
Yeah.
damage to the land and the air and the water
Yeah.
permanently.
There's a famous quote about this fight to protect this national forest, and the quote said something like, we have to win every single time. They only have to win once.
Right.
Because if they get to log it or whatever, the
It's
fight
done.
was over. It's done.
It's exactly right. I mean,
Yeah.
once they drill those wells and once that land is fracked, you don't go back.
Yeah.
And
Well, we've already kind of lost in Colorado, at least.
well, there are many battles, right? We don't
Yeah.
we have to win the war.
Yeah.
We're losing some battles, but we have to win the war.
All right. Well, Scott Franklin, trying to shake your hand through this. Good man. Thanks for fighting the battles
Absolutely.
for us, and hopefully we can help. We're the troops.